Hello. Hello. My name is Paolo Colombo'nun, and I have a very quick question. Does everyone speak English here? Two people don't speak English. You do.
Everybody speaks English.
Herkes İngilizce biliyor mu?
Who doesn't speak English?
İngilizce bilmeyenler.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe if you could go there.
I think
Ben sizi en arka tarafa alabilir miyim ki fısıltı halinde tercümeyi aktaracağım. Böylelikle diğer konuklarımız da İngilizceden takip edebilecekler. Ben hemen arkaya sizi...
you will have your own personal, very personal interpreter, and I
Say a toast.
Okay, we're trying to put some discipline in this.
I'm trying to discipline the crowd.
Okay, so very rapidly, I just want to give the context of our talk for the people who are coming to this exhibition for the first time. This is an exhibition called Neighbours, which was curated by Chonek Bafra and myself. It is an exhibition that looks at the narrative thread in art of that's being done today in countries that had, let's say, a relation with this particular area and zone. As part of the exhibition, we have a series of talks, and these talks, like this one today, are happening in a space which was devoted to the 1 Square Meter Festival. 1 Square Meter Festival is a group, it's an actual festival, it's done by a group in Armenia, which takes place in 1 square meter. This is the stage, but
I'm in Armenian territory right now.
if you sit here, no, if you sit here, you will be.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, this is called occupation.
I'm in Armenia.
Territorial occupation. So,
Finally.
Finally.
And they let me in. Amazing.
Anyway, we're using this space as a...
Go back to Azerbaijan.
No, you can...
I need to control the computer.
Okay. And not Armenians?
It was nice. It was nice. I liked it.
So, going back to the question, this is a space which is also like a theater, and that we use with the permission of the artists, of the Armenian artists, as a center for conversations. And we're going to have a conversation today with Rena Effendi, who is an artist, a photographer from Baku. And going through your biography, I read that you began photographing in 2001. So you must have been around 23, 24. What did you study art, or how did you get to photography?
Can everyone hear me? Because there's a lot of background noise happening. A lot of the art is with the sound. So if everybody can hear, right? I started exploring photography through painting. I started painting for about a year with an artist in a studio, and I realized that it's a very kind of a stationary sort of way, that without much moving around, you have to be in the studio and kind of look inside. And I like that, but as much as I like to look inside, I also like to interact with people and sort of be on the street and go and find spontaneous situations, and painting didn't give that to me. Photography really did, and when I picked up the camera, it was almost like an instant love affair. It was like very physical. It was an old, heavy metal Nikon, and I loved the sound of it. It was like cocking a gun, like, you know. I really love the sound, and I couldn't put it down. I realized I'm holding it, and I just literally cannot put it down. And then that's how it started. I called up my painting teacher, said, sorry, I found a new love, you lost me. So I did, and I went on the street and kind of started shooting.
You started out, if I'm correct, also as a translator.
And that was before.
That was before. Of the people who were working in the pipelines. Or the company, for
embassy,
the company,
US Embassy, USAID, BP, all the
British Petroleum, etc.
Yeah.
So that gave you an automatic subject for your work.
Yes.
And at this point, you're in Baku. Mm-hmm. You grew up there. You're born there. You grew up there, and you published in 2009. Basically 8 years after you started your practice as a photographer, this book which is called Pipe Dreams, which basically goes through the pipeline.
Follows the pipeline.
Follows the pipeline. And pipelines are certainly a way of communication, maybe not of individuals but of money. And therefore of something that people consider valuable, but they all are under the ground, or anyway they're covered.
I call them geopolitical blood arteries.
Exactly, that's what they are, but in fact they have a flesh around, which is the flesh you photograph.
Yeah.
And I think that the subtext of this book, Pipe Dreams, is that the cost of these blood lines is actual blood, and it's poverty, and it's destruction of places, destruction of nature, and okay, now I'm going to switch the question to you. Did you pose yourself as an observer, as a narrator, as a... I probably know the answer, but I'm going to ask it, with a moral stance. And what was your point of view? Because in photography, there's always a point of view.
Yeah, of course. It was interesting because, as you mentioned, I worked for these various organizations. I, in fact, but translated some of these negotiations for the building of the pipeline when I was at the embassy, working and translating high-level talks. And then later, I got an assignment, a very small commercial assignment from BP as a photographer, to go along the Azerbaijani segment of the pipeline and to photograph social responsibility program of BP. Basically things that they built along the way to kind of help the communities, bringing about change in the communities and things like that. So I was put in a car, in like a vehicle, company vehicle, and I was taken from a school to the irrigation ditch, to the well, to the whatever hospital, and from point to point to point to point. And there were some, good projects, okay? But between those things, between those locations, I saw this. I saw poverty, I saw despair, I saw how a lot of the people in rural areas have seen very little progress and have, how the money and the wealth hasn't really trickled down, and how their lives haven't been changed, how their dreams have not been fulfilled. So then I realized that I need to go again. I need to make another journey, and I need to see it again, and I need to do it independently without any kind of agenda or without any assignment, and kind of have a personal investigation of the situation there. And part of it I also saw on a journey with my friend who is here, Stanley. We went across the country together, and we kind of followed the course of the pipeline, and we photographed there as well. And we saw all these things that were happening. But then I realized that I needed to go to Georgia, and then I needed to go to Turkey to kind of complete the journey. So I was able to get some funding that gave me this artistic freedom to explore all of this terrain on my own, and I did. And I went, and in the book I'm saying that the purpose of this trip was to unsmile the smiles of this corporate calendar that I was asked to make. You know, in fact, they didn't really use my pictures in the end, because, I don't know, they used maybe 2 in the end, because they weren't happy with them. So I did the book, you know, and that's how the book came out of that assignment. It kind of gave me an idea to do this on my own, you know. And then I remember talking to one of the people in BP. She was in the PR department, and she was like, but, you know, why are you going to these places? Like, did you get a permission? I'm like, these are villages, people live there. I don't need your permission for me to go to see the people in the villages. And that's what I did. I literally just, and the pipeline in physical shape and form, you can't see it, it's buried in the ground. So it's a very symbolic journey. You just follow this kind of trail, okay? And it's a trail of human destinies. It's kind of a trail of, you know, as I said, like dreams, unfulfilled hopes and dreams, because a lot of the people I met in Azerbaijan and in Georgia and in Turkey, they were promised a lot of things when these guys were, you know, the corporate, you know, the people that were responsible for building the pipeline. They were coming in and they were zoning the area and they were talking to the locals and they were making promises. You'll have jobs, you'll have this, you'll have that. Not only these promises have not been fulfilled, some people lost land, some people lost their incomes. You know, I met fishermen in Turkey, 400 of them lost their fishing income in the Bay of Yumurtalık in Ceyhan because the pipeline security wouldn't let them fish in the waters where they used to fish. So, and when they saw me, they said, you're the first journalist who comes and talks to us about this. They hired lawyers, they went against the company. So these stories, that was my kind of directive, my own directive, to collect these stories. So you can say, I don't know, observer, storyteller, critic, I mean, tourist, all of that together. Political tourist, politically engaged tourist, something like that. I just went and tried to see and have a feel for where I can collect these stories of human interest stories that talk about the fact that these just simple individuals that didn't get nothing, didn't get anything from this wealth. I mean, 1 million barrels of oil daily is being pumped through this pipeline. At $100 per barrel, this is $100 million worth of oil every single day. And you get people living above on $50 a month pension. You get villages that don't have schools and hospitals. That's basically what I. Sorry, I should have showed you. I'm not.
Yeah, maybe you should show some photographs.
Sorry.
As we continue the conversation, but
sorry.
The issue is clear that you give to photography a value which is totally political, and here's some.
You're gonna get distracted now, you see?
No. There are some of the fantastic photographs, but I mean, it's just an issue. It's just a question, how, which is more of an artistic question. When something is so political, what is the role, let's say, of formal research to that?
Why doesn't
the role of formal
research?
Yes.
Because I believe that with photography, especially when you approach it as a form of art, which I see myself not only as a journalist but like someone with a very expressive voice. That I try to do it. The way I do it is very emotional, so it's not dry kind of journalism. It's storytelling, and it's very emotional storytelling. And I think if you do it this way, you touch people in a very different way. I think I think you're able to tell the story in a way that people remember. It sticks, and the photographic image has that power. It really goes sort of in your brain and it stays there for a while. It has that immense power. And I think that, that's why photography for me is so attractive as a medium of kind of visual expression, is because of that power. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there have been studies done, and Amnesty International did a report about the pipeline and about sort of how it's sort of putting a tag on human rights in these countries and things like that. But I think images of people living there is just very important, especially still images, just to arrest this kind of like slice out this reality and present it in this way, I think makes an impact that's very different from a report or even a documentary film.
Yeah. In what sense versus a documentary film?
I think
because ultimately when I see a photograph, I know there's going to be another 1,000 photographs following it and another 1,000 that precede it. So in a way it is a totally compressed narrative that does not use words, even though you use words in your work, which is yet another thing. But I think somewhere along the way, what is the difference?
Between a moving image and a still image?
Between a documentary.
Documentary, you mean filmmaking? Moving image.
Yeah.
For me, it's a difference between the moving image and the still image. I see both. I mean, the way I take pictures, sometimes I'm very much influenced by cinema, for example. Like for me, having this kind of cinematic narrative is very important. Yeah. So for me, it's just a matter of still image versus moving image, and I think still image has that kind of immortality in a way, really the way you arrest this moment, in like a slice of time, versus the image that's fleeting, that's kind of passing, and you see it and you forget, and then the next image comes on. I think in a way, still photographs, they have a kind of a more staying power, if you want to say that way. But the way I lay out the work is very much as a narrative, it's a story, the sequence.
So what we see here are these, the positioning of these photographs in your book.
It is a movie for me. Exactly. In a way, yeah. I mean, I try to make it that way.
And these photographs are usually accompanied by a text. I mean, the book, so you respect not only the fact that the book is time art, which actually turned to be, has a beginning and end, but you actually put your voice, your writing voice in the book. And it's clearly very important, but I would like to hear from you.
The way I approach writing with photography is I believe like it's very difficult sort of to write, for a photographer to write articles at the same time, if you want to write a full-on article, like journalistic article, because it's a different way of thinking in a way. But what photographers can do very well is this kind of either stream of conscious writing, like just their thoughts, emotions, and feelings of a place, or descriptions sometimes, like photographer Diane Arbus, our favorite photographer. She would describe things in a room that even don't have any relation to a photograph necessarily. She described this bottle, standing next to the subject, and then she described feelings, and she described history and things like that. So it's kind of erratic writing. It's not really organized logically very well in the form of an article, but it's very emotional as well. And I think it complements, in a way, it complements the images. In this book in particular, I put a lot of politics in the writing, because the images, again, they have a very different feel about them. They're not really straight in your face journalism kind of images. So it was important for me to kind of talk about social aspects of this work in the text. So I put a lot of it in the text, and then the images correspond with the text in that way.
No, clearly the images have a totally emotional impact, because they tell the stories of individuals. Question. You mentioned the promises.
Promises,
Promises. Yeah. And basically the promises of economic development. I don't know if maybe you should bring it up. But did you ever read a book called Confessions of an Economical Hitman? Does it mean anything to you? Does it mean anything to anyone? You've read it? Oh. I mean, did you immediately click when she mentioned the word promises?
I will read it now.
It is a fantastic book, saying that war is waged not only with bullets, but it's waged with the economy, and it's waged by making false promises that put countries and populations in debt, that the art of constructing economical previews that are not true is at the heart of control of people, control of states, and also that this control is usually done through indebtment, through major structural, infrastructural works.
Mega projects.
Mega projects.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, this is the case. I mean, this is why for me it was important to focus on the human cost, on the voices of these small individuals, the fishermen, the farmers, the, people who live in the vicinity of the pipeline, because their voices are not heard because of these loudspeakers, these mega speakers of state and corporate propaganda that talks about the great, the great benefit of these projects. And they do have benefits like political stability and fostering economic growth and all the rest of it. But there is a human cost, and people don't talk about it enough. And I think that was the purpose of this book. And often people tell me, this book, especially Azeris, from Azerbaijan, they open the Azeri side of the book and they say, what is this? Like, that's not Baku. This is not how we see Baku. In Baku, you drive Hummers and you go to Burberry's and the Tiffany's, and there's discos everywhere. Everything is just glimmering, everything. And I'm trying to say that's not what I wanted to show. That's precisely not what I wanted to show. I wanted to show the flip coin of this progress. Because so much is, there's a CNN commercial in Azerbaijan featuring president's daughter, and all these high rises and all the...
Who's a collector?
I'm sure. He never bought my pictures.
What? Okay.
Big foundation, everything. It's a family business, The whole country is a family business. So anyway, and you never see this. You don't see this. This is not shown on CNN. This picture. And that's why I think it's important. I tried as much as possible when the book came out. I tried to make sure to get some sort of coverage, like widespread coverage. I even went on the radio trying to talk about my pictures on the radio. That was interesting. Yeah, so I did radio, TV, several major publications like Times of London, and so several places I tried to kind of reach out to the general public about this issue because it's important, I think.
Okay, formally in terms of descriptive, you mentioned how you like still picture more than moving picture.
No, I didn't say that.
No, how it's possibly more significant
it's
for
just,
you.
Yeah, I feel I can express myself through still imagery better. So far, I haven't really dabbled into film, but so far the still imagery still seduces me in a major way. So, I still find it incredible. I'm still enamored by it. So.
And all this book is still done with the same camera you began with, or
several cameras. No, I picked up a Rolleiflex.
Yes.
I went to New York. And I went to Metropolitan Museum of Art and I saw a show by Richard Avedon and square format. And I've never seen pictures blown up in the size and square, and it's so powerful. And then I went to, there's this iconic place where all photographers buy equipment, B&H. And there was I went there and they had this Rolleiflex, the twin reflex camera, and it looked like a fashion accessory. And I thought, wow.
The vertical one.
Yeah, that was two, metal.
That you see things.
Exactly. And I thought, I just love this camera. I love it. I want to wear it all the time, So, and then the guy was like, it's Hasidic Jews, they work in the shops, and he was like, I can get it to you for cheap, So
Did
I bought
they get it for you for cheap?
Yeah, it was $600, which is not a lot for a Rolleiflex. No. So I bought my first Rolleiflex from B&H, and then I went to the street with it. My first pictures basically were with the Rolleiflex. Yeah, like my first real pictures.
The Rolleiflex.
Yeah, and it's a great camera. It's the kind of camera. It's not aggressive. It's not phallic in any way. It's sort of like very
But you
very modest.
You photograph it from this side.
From the kind of the stop between the chest and the stomach.
It's basically the height of the eyes of a donkey.
You don't annoy people with it. You just like very carefully like walk around, and you can be very quiet. It's a very quiet camera. And then you look in the viewfinder, and it's a kneeling, praying position. You're like, So it's very humble.
It is really good, but
very humbling.
It has this height.
Yeah, it's almost like you're almost on your knees all the time,
Yeah, well, okay, little aside about cinema. Did you ever see a movie called Au hasard Balthazar?
No,
by
I
Bresson?
need to write these things down.
Au hasard Balthazar is a story of many generations, things that are happening through the eye of a donkey. So the whole film is shot at the height of the eye of a donkey.
I'll remember that now.
And it's Robert Bresson, fantastic French filmmaker.
Oh yeah, I know him. Yes.
But it's basically Rolleiflex height. It's Rolleiflex height. It's a totally humble, and it's always photographing from little below.
From the belly button. I have a friend who is also using the same camera, and she calls it views from my belly button. It's kind of like a belly button.
She can also view them.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a wonderful tool that I love.
Silly question. I mean, these are black and white photos. You still find black and white film?
I don't. Well, this. In fact, if we will jump to the next book, it's been a while since I shot black and white. And in the beginning, I started off black and white. I was really into black and white photographers. Early inspiration. Robert Frank, Diane Arbus, Agdor. A lot of amazing, great photographers. And I was into black and white, and I was studying it. And I see it, in a way, I see it almost like when you study painting, you go through drawing, like charcoal, like black and white. You learn shapes, and you learn the way like light is affecting physical shapes with pencils and with charcoals, And then you go into paint, and it's a whole different thing. It's temperature. It's like you go into color, and the way colors are used, are changing with a different temperature of light and things like that. So it's a whole different thing. So this is drawing. And then later on, I finally arrived at painting, and I think it's been a while since maybe past 7 years or 8 years. I haven't done a lot of work in black and white. I've been just so into color, just really.
Were you participating to the printing of these photographs?
These ones, I printed most of them myself, but some myself, and some, again, courtesy of Stanley with his amazing printer, Natalie. She printed some of these. Amazing printer in Paris. I had an exhibition, so she printed a set for me, and then I scanned from those prints into the book. And she did a wonderful job, so half and half. Yeah, so some of it was hours in a dark room, hours and hours in a dark room. Working, developing film. I developed all the film myself.
Other question of where you proceed. Do you trim your photographs, or what is in the negative is what it is?
Pretty much for this book is
pretty much
what you get. Sometimes with color work, sometimes I work a little bit with contrast and toning, but it's not anything major, because I still work with film, and I'm happy with the way film translates light. I'm happy with the way film gives me these surprises, you know, this like, that gives me this palette that you know, is unexpected, and it's, you know, it's different place, every country has its own color palette almost. And I'm really happy to discover that with film, you know. I go back and I get surprised, wow. You know,
I'm not a photographer.
Turkey is pastel and India is electric, and this is, you know, Kyrgyzstan is out of whack, you know.
Kodak is something else.
Whatever, this is monochrome, and that's, you know, really you discover these different kind of tonal differences between the places that I go to, and that's amazing, and I think film does it beautifully. It does it beautifully. And I'm, you know, I'm still, that's the reason why I'm sticking with film, you know, really. I'm preempting the digital versus film question.
No, but are you stacking up on film?
Sorry?
Are you stacking up on film?
Yeah, big time. B&H, 500 rolls,
yeah.
Every time I go there, or, yeah. I try to, like, I panic because what if they will discontinue, or there's always this big scare.
Lots of it has been discontinued.
Yeah, but they're producing, Kodak's still producing film. Inshallah. Yeah. If it goes, I don't know what I'll do. Then I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really asked myself that question yet.
Can you tell us a little as we go through these photographs?
Yeah. This particular chapter that we're going through is looking at refugees from various conflicts that are sort of sizzling in the region. In the region, yeah. So, like, here the man and woman are Georgian refugees from Abkhazia, and these two girls are born into the refugee status, because that's one of the things about refugees. Their new children being born in places to refugee families, they're still refugees. It's almost like a nationality, it's a nation within a nation, you know? Like in Azerbaijan, there were 700,000 internally displaced people. Now that population really exploded because of the new children being born. And they still have that, so a lot of them live in these, still in the same, you know, camps, you know, refugee settlements. So I'm looking, these are Chechen refugees in Pankisi Valley in Georgia.
This is Georgia.
Georgia, yeah. So it's all sort of mixed, Chechen refugees. Mixed in, what I'm trying to show with this chapter is that this geography, I don't know if you remember the map, I can show you the map later. The geography of the pipeline wasn't determined by economics, it was determined by politics. If they wanted to do it cheap, they would have laid it through Armenia and Iran, okay? But no, they couldn't do it. I mean, where's the map? I'll show you. So if you look at this map, this red line, I don't know if you can see it, but it makes a curve like this. It circumvents, circumvents Armenia, goes to Georgia, goes into Turkey. And it's not mountains really that's a problem. It's politically determined, you know. Certain areas in Turkey that avoids for political reasons. So you know, I wanted to show that this terrain is not a stable terrain, that there's sizzling conflicts. And in fact, 2008, we all witnessed Georgia-Russia, you know, kind of conflict. So they're unresolved, you know, we still are in a state of war with Armenia. It's a ceasefire, but there's no peace agreement. So I'm showing the lives of these refugees, you know, they've been living in limbo for...
Were there a number of displacements? Were there a number of people displaced for the building? Did people lose
the pipeline building didn't displace anyone. No.
So people did not lose their fields?
They lost their fields, but they didn't lose their homes. A lot of them lost their fields due to the local corruption. They were compensated by the company, but the local authorities took the compensation. And they never received it. So it's basically, you get the money through the municipality, and the municipality gives us to the cousins, or the uncles and the aunts, and the farmers never got to, you know, to get their proper compensation. I mean, it's not all of them have the story, but a lot of them do. I mean, this image, I took it in 2005. So basically 12 years after this refugee family left, you know, the occupied territories, For 12 years they've been living in a train, inside a train, for 12 years. They got there and they stayed there for 12 years.
How sudden was this photograph?
How sudden?
Sudden.
Sudden.
No, I'm asking because I see somebody blowing smoke
in the back.
In the back.
Yeah, that was a sudden moment.
Yeah, was that, you know, like serendipity or you?
I was in the space. I think Stanley, we were together. Yeah, we were there and we were walking around between the train cars. So we kind of spread around. We were just observing life, you know, around. And then at some point, people stop noticing you because they're getting used to you being there. So there are no more these people from out of space with cameras. They're just like, they get used to you and they go on about their own business, so they continue doing what they're doing. So that was this one moment where the family just simply forgot I was there, and I stood below and I was able to take this picture, and you know, they were unaware of me, so it's one of those nice moments. So yeah, all of these are from these various refugee. I mean, this house, children fall through the cracks. I mean, it's still, I went there recently and it's still there and it's still full of refugees and they still have those cracks. And it's improvised electricity, it's horrible, you know, it's really horrible. And it's in a city where the government commissions $120 million convention center from a star architect, you know. So these things exist in the same city, and you know, it's kind of dichotomy.
It's a little aside. I read something, scouting through internet, I don't know why, that the 86 richest people in the world. 86? 86
Forbes list?
Yeah, 86 richest in the world collectively have the same amount of money, so basically they own $3,750,000, the worth of 3,750,000 people. So 86 people technically have half of the money of the world.
Yeah. I mean, the gap,
so, I mean, just, you know, these things are staggering in terms, you know, especially when you mention, you know, the Archistar Convention Center and the fact that people live on the equivalent of $50 per month.
Yeah.
In conditions which are
inhuman.
Inhuman, and not only inhuman, they press the generations of people into
being born, you know, into these conditions.
Into
being trapped. I mean, basically trapped. Yeah. Yep.
When I see pictures like that, can you go back before? And I think I know the answer.
You do?
Yes, but I'm going to ask you nonetheless.
Okay.
There is clearly this is what's happening. But there is, for example, a very famous photographer who comes from a completely different part, which is Jeff Wall, who stages photographs as if it were a photogram of a movie. What do you think of this use of photography?
I'm open to it, but I don't practice it myself. What I try to do instead is find the movie in the real situation. You know, I'm looking for these kind of cinematic moments, and when I see them, I feel so lucky. I feel so blessed. You know, when I see these moments, kind of a surreal moment that reminds me of a movie I saw or a book I read, and these are the photographic moments that I really treasure. Like when I see them in reality, and I think hunting for these moments and looking for them actively is really one of the most exciting things I can do. It's thrilling, you know, it really is.
I don't know how much time we all have as we go on forever, but you said the word hunting?
Hunting.
For this moment.
Should we go to the next?
Exactly.
Okay.
This book, which is called Liquid Land, and if you would be so kind to tell us why Liquid Land?
Why Liquid Land? I'll tell you. Absheron Peninsula, where I'm from, where Baku city is breathing with oil. And often when I went into these landscapes, I felt the land under my feet, it just went, you know, I felt like the earth was breathing and something liquid.
Marshes.
It was like marshes. It was like walking on a swamp, like an oil swamp. You know, I felt, you know, it was really liquid, and I felt like that would be an appropriate title for a place. Yeah, yeah.
If I may leap in 1 second, because you talked about hunting.
Hunting, yes.
There is a great text in this book, which I hope you will all read. And it's a text that tells about your father, who was an entomologist.
Lepidopterist, butterfly biologist.
Like Nabokov.
But Nabokov was an amateur, my father was a professional.
Okay, sorry. Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, like Nabokov.
Certainly butterflies carry...
Yeah, that's him. That's him with his butterflies.
I read a catalog this morning, somebody saying the butterfly was his favorite animal.
Animal?
I
love that.
Because it was a gentle animal.
Because it was what?
Tamara?
Oh, yeah.
It's a text that Tamara wrote, and interviewing somebody in Iraq, and asking what's your favorite animal. I said the butterfly.
Butterfly is an animal. So you can see that. You know, there's one butterfly that screams. You can hear. It's a deadhead moth, they call it.
Yeah.
If you kill it, it emanates a sound.
But is it because it has air under the carapace?
I'm not sure, but it does. You can hear it. I heard it. He pinned it through. He was a mass murderer of butterflies. My father, 30,000 of them killed, pinned. 30,000 butterflies hunted and pinned for science. Not for pleasure.
Science.
Not for pleasure.
They can't any made for science. Don't think.
This is the thing. I mean, this is the theme of the book. You know, in a way. I mean, I'm rereading Susan Sontag's on photography. I decided every 3 years I have to read this book again and again, just to refresh all the beautiful thoughts on photography. And she's talking about this kind of the nature, the aggressive nature of photography, and in a way, we sort of. It's really controversial. We whatever is happening in front of us, whether it's really, really bad or really, really good, we'll let it happen. And in fact, because we're there, it keeps happening. So if, say, you know, there's torture or something and we're there and it's being recorded, it's happening, you know, in front of us. So in a way, photography has that really controversial nature about it, almost murderous in a way. You know, we're almost like we sacrifice, in a way, people that we photograph. We show them not in a way they want to be seen, maybe, okay? And we show these places and these people in like desolate conditions often. And in a way, that's a sacrifice. We're sacrificing them for something, for a bigger picture.
It's one of the issues.
It's what he did with the butterflies.
When he hunted the butterflies.
He hunted them.
And I think at one point you say, I understood his pleasure in hunting.
But he saved them. He saved them as well. He hunted them because he wanted to study them, and he wanted to study the kind of plants and the habitats and where they are and why they're disappearing. And so, in that sense, he was saving them. He saved a lot more than well, maybe not, I don't know. But he did kill a lot of them. But he really hunted them because he studied them.
But you compared his pleasure in the hunt, which you could not understand as a child, the same pleasure that you suddenly realize exists
as a photographer. Yeah, I couldn't understand. Yeah, you know, my father, he always had like a very ghostly presence in my childhood. He was sort of always away on these butterfly hunts. Like, I only remember him leaving. I don't remember him coming back. You know, just leaving for the and coming back. He was coming back with the cans of butterflies and like being excited and everything. But I realized that after he died, I got to know him better than when he was alive. It's very strange, but it really did happen this way. I started looking into his work and the passion that he had and the obsession, like the nature of this obsession, of this like hunt, you know, and the butterfly, the hunt for beauty. You know, he spent his 52nd birthday alone in a forest with a lamp. And I read it in his diary, and he said in the diary that for 2 hours, he said to himself, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, waiting for one female species of a butterfly that never came that night. She never showed up. He spent a night there with a lamp, and often, like, as photographers, we end up doing this sort of similar mad thing of like going in these places, just sitting there for things, waiting for things to happen, in a way with a lamp in our head, like just like begging for these moths to come to the light, you know, to come to us, like, you know. So there's a lot of similarities: the obsessive nature, the hunt, the collection, you know, collection of images, collection of butterflies, you know, this kind of the fragility of our subjects, the fragility of the butterflies, the mortality of, you know, our subjects and what we photograph, how we participate in that mortality, how we, in a slice of time, you know, taking these pictures and participate in the mortality of the subjects. You know, there's a lot of parallels. So I started thinking about it, and that's, sorry, I'm doing a bad job of not showing you pictures again.
But these are the pictures.
That's him from childhood. He was, you know, he knew very early on what he wanted to do, and I was always very jealous of that, because I kind of came to photography later. He was a boy, you know, like a 12-year-old boy hunting butterflies, and then grew into a scientist. These are the pictures that he took, and the pictures that I inherited after he died. Again, another ghostly presence. I never knew of these pictures. That's him. So, you know, the mystery in these shots, like this kind of weird mystery, really drew me into photography. These were my first photographs, like the first photographs that I saw that had an impact on me, artistic impact. His diary, where he's talking about the lamp and the birthday, and that's him hunting. You know, spending days and months on a hunt, you know, constant. Get back to pictures and being strange. And these are some of the first images that I took as a photographer when I took his diary and I followed him to the same places where he hunted butterflies. I took these images.
How old were you?
These were some of the first images, like 2002, 2003, so I was in my 20s. This here, the giraffe and the shark, is where he worked. He worked in the Institute of Zoology. And I remember in the diary he always complained, we're buying a new stuffed elephant. Why the hell do we need a stuffed elephant? They can't even give me a decent lamp. You know? I just remember all these things he said. And this is the place where he worked, basically the institute. And some of these were taken in locales where he hunted butterflies. So I hunted my first images. That's him with a Russian version of a Rolleiflex. I think it's called Leningrad, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a Russian twin reflex camera that he used to photograph also. And that's, you know, another picture from his youth that I inherited. So yeah, I'm bringing together my father's images of butterflies that he collected throughout his life as a scientist with my photographs of people and places in urban decay of my city.
And fragility.
Sorry?
And fragility.
And fragility. And I'm trying to make these connections, you know, like the hair and the flower are connecting in my crazy head. I don't know, maybe they're not connecting for you, but these kind of connections I'm trying to build, and they're like purely visual, emotional connections that I saw sort of in these photographs. It's a highly personal work. It's very different from Pipe Dreams. It's a different narrative, it's a different feeling, but I felt like I needed to speak this way. It's still socially engaged, I think, because it still tells the story of these people trapped in the oil landscapes of my city. But the narrative is very different, very personal, very, you know, a bit more lyrical, maybe you can say. I don't know. I mean, it's just a different way of showing the subject. You know. So yeah, the people are the butterflies. So one of the chapters is called On Endangered Species of People.
In fact, you have, I don't know if this is a photograph of a butterfly called Neighbours, which is basically doesn't exist anymore because they destroyed all the oleander trees
yes.
where they nest.
Exactly.
I mean, all of these things deal with very specific wounds that one can give to nature, and which are similar wounds that one can give to people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see, if you look carefully, you'll see the pins. All these butterflies are dead, all of them. They're all dead butterflies. And he pinned them carefully on these flowers, arranged them beautifully, you know, these dead butterflies. It's kind of like just also madness of like arranging these dead butterflies.
But are all these now in the museum in Baku?
This is another reason why I included this work with my work, is because the actual collection, the 30,000 butterflies that he hunted and pinned, you know, into glass boxes, is disintegrating. It's decomposing, turning to dust. They're very fragile. You need to put a lot of chemicals in the boxes to preserve them, and the state hasn't really been looking after them. The collection belongs to the state, and science, unless it has to do with oil, it's sort of been put on the back burner in general. It's not really the state priority. You know, lepidoptery and entomology is not really. So there's no funding, and you know, they're turning to dust. Literally, he's 40 years of obsessive, you know, collection and work, and kind of like ruined family life, and all of that is just, you know, turning to dust. So in a way, with this book, I'm trying to kind of pay homage to a father who doesn't really deserve it, you know. But in a way, like as I said, even though he had such a ghostly presence in my childhood, I got to know him as an individual after he died. I've gotten closer to him. I understand the obsession. I understand why he did that. I even learned to respect it in a way. You know, I grew out of my kind of bitterness with him for not being there and all of that. So, and I think that was a beautiful kind of process of, you know, it was kind of reconciling, you know. Sorry, should we, I don't know, we're talking too much.
No, I see a question there. Another question.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Your new project, she's doing a memoir, but also connects this kind of trying to figure out.
Yeah,
Hello?
it works.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know, it's just really interesting to see that you've been on this journey, and I think it'd be interesting because she's writing a little bit more about kind of trying to connect and see what her relationship with her father, who she also kind of stated in a very similar way, that she didn't know him while he was alive, and that she's tried to come to know him afterwards by doing this project. And so how do you think that the not knowing your dad influenced you becoming a photographer, or this journey?
This is kind of this is very interesting, because I think what I really definitely remember always, when I actually didn't know what I was going to be, when I didn't know I was going to be a photographer, I was very restless, and I was desperately looking for this outlet, you know, like, what am I going to be? And I remember being constantly jealous of my father, like him really knowing what he wants to do, him being so, you know, just in love with his work. And I wanted that. I wanted to be this way. And then when I finally found photography, it really just connected. It just went back to my father and kind of the roots. And the mystery, of his life, for sure influenced me, I think. I think in general I'm looking for sort of mystery as a photographer, you know. And strange things started happening, because as I became a photographer, I find random people everywhere who knew my father, and they give me even pictures of him. Oh, we knew your father, we went on a trip with your father, we went butterfly hunting with your father, we went in the mountains with your father, we got drunk with your father, you know, like all these things. Then they all come back to me, and then I collect these, you know, these sort of mementos of his life, little anecdotes from various people he met, randomly, and even in other places, not just in Azerbaijan. I went to Georgia and I met somebody who knew my father. When this book was published, 3 people from Germany, Netherlands, and I don't remember another location, wrote me an email. We knew your father, we worked with your father. You know, I'm a scientist, I went on trips, I have a collection, blah, blah, blah, and it was amazing. I thought it was, you know, I thought it was just remarkable, you know, to kind of connect like that with his past. And they started telling me stories about him, you know, how he was. He was, yeah, definitely, like, it's sort of magical the way this sort of thing happened. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
You started the talk by occupying Armenia.
Oh, I didn't. I just visited.
Right, you visited as an Azeri.
Yeah.
And which, well, I mean, it's
which I'm not really allowed to do. So that's why
I understand, but it's I mean, it's a statement also on identity.
Yeah,
obviously,
sure.
and
Yes.
I just wanted to really ask you about, and I know that you were very young when the Soviet Union disintegrated, but I'm really interested in kind of maybe in understanding a bit more through what you do and visually and as an artist in Azerbaijan today, in the context of this, you know, super rich oil state that's run by a family trying to be very artistic and very enterprising and enlightened, etc. I mean, is there nostalgia for Soviet times?
For me, or personally?
No. I mean, do you sense this at all in terms of when you're? I mean, because you're trying to depict something that has some kind of social relevance that is not just a beautiful picture.
Right.
I'm just. Is there nostalgia on one hand? Is it that the change, which has been now some decades, has been only skin deep? When you go to these poor villages, has their life changed really in any way since prior to the fall of the wall?
Yeah.
You, as an artist, expressing yourself, that whole notion of freedom of expression, which is taken excessively for granted, maybe in the West, and it's not the luxury of other people. Even the language, I mean, I'm guessing, when you said you translated, I noticed, sorry, switching back, your father wrote in Russian, understandably. When you were translating, you were translating Russian to English,
yes.
not Azeri-Turkish.
I'm a Russian speaker.
Right, but I mean, even the language today, I'm just, sorry, they're all
everything
languages.
is changing, yeah.
Right, so how do people view you as an artist today? Do they have a respect for a photographer the way that is the same?
I think your question is about identity, right? If I want
it
to
is about identity, but it's about identity today as an Azeri photographer, woman today, and in relationship to
the past
and the very notable Soviet past. It's not just any past. It's part of a bigger empire. Your father probably traveled all over the Soviet Union. He didn't just travel in Azerbaijan.
He wasn't allowed to travel outside of Soviet Union for political reasons.
But I mean, it's a huge. It was like a sixth of the world. So
how do I begin? I mean, identity. It's a very complicated issue for me. Identity in general. I mean, right now, I'm an Azeri photographer living in Cairo. Okay, in Cairo, I've been living there for 3 years. Since the revolution we moved. I have an American husband, and my daughter is Azeri American, growing up in Cairo. Okay, so this whole question about, and I'm a Russian speaker. I speak Azeri conversationally. Not well enough to really express myself fluently and beautifully in this language. Unfortunately, so I've always felt like kind of disenfranchised a little bit, and then I always saw myself as somebody from Baku, really, like Baku more than Azerbaijan, in a way. But now I'm traveling the world. I go to so many places. Every year, half a year I spend in Cairo, the other half from Alaska to Zambia to you know, Congo and Transylvania. And I go to a lot of places. And in a way, I feel like this is now the new identity. Like for me, I've morphed into this kind of strange sort of being, which is hard. It's hard to classify. Like who am I? And I'm sure a lot of my colleagues here, like you know Stanley and you know John and many like Benedict, can relate to that because we travel the world and we don't live in the places where we were born necessarily. Okay, and we kind of feel detached sometimes. And for me, it's even more so because the language of the language thing. Because I speak the kind of the colonial language of Soviet Union, yeah, Russian language. So, but I also speak English, and now English, I've been reading in English since I was 19, you know, American and English literature, and sometimes I feel like I express myself better in English than in Russian, you know, but I dream in Russian sometimes, and I swear in Russian, okay? So, you know, it's all this different, like, facets, and when I think about it, I think, like, I shouldn't really try to label myself in any way, and I shouldn't really classify myself in any way. This is it, you know. You get what you get. It's this kind of amorphous, like, liquid. Soviet legacy. Nostalgia, do I have nostalgia for Soviet Union? I don't personally have nostalgia. I don't have nostalgia for Soviet Union. I'm very happy it's over. Very happy it's over. But a lot of people, a lot of older generation, they haven't found their place in life, and they haven't found jobs. They haven't found, you know, they have this kind of reglamented almost like employment opportunities within the various sectors of government. Everything was owned by the government. You know, recently I went to Cuba and I was amazed. It was like taking a time machine back to Baku in the 90s. I saw the store window, a matchbox. You know, some detergent, chewing gum, and soap with little cardboard price tags. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like Baku in the 90s, you know? And everything is owned by the government. The shoe shiners are owned by the government, you know? The government owned nail polish people, you know? It was the same, this is how we grew up. And now it doesn't exist. It's been like wiped clean, wiped off very fast, like this, like this. This kind of transformation happened in a very fast and shocking manner. And there too, yeah, there's people who used to work for kolkhoz, you know, the collective union, you know, the agriculture was collectivized. And now they're outside of this kind of kolkhoz system, so they're trying to make a living. But some did better than others. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. It's not uniform. You know, some did much better, others didn't do very well and are nostalgic, so it depends. I'm happy. I'm happy it's over, definitely. You can ask other Azeris.
Alas, we have to close in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So if there is another question.
Yeah. There's a question, why is a man taking a bath in oil? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because it's good for you.
It's very good. Donkey's milk.
Good for your bones. Cures arthritis, apparently.
If there's no other question, he has a question.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, great. Thank you.
You say you travel around the world a lot. What parallels within communities do you see from the pipeline? And if we get back to Confession of an Economic Hitman, what kind of parallels are you seeing across the world that could connect to the project that you did in Bloodline?
Good question. I mean, I think globally in general, like, there are a lot of parallels to the various stories within the book. For example, the first chapter of Pipe Dreams deals with this one neighborhood that's undergoing a lot of transformation that had to do with oil money being poured into the capital, and people were buying up these ancient courtyards and small buildings and pushing people out to the edges and building high-rises, building high-rises everywhere. A parallel, Tarlabaşı in Istanbul, same thing is happening here, you know, and gentrification of, you know, like your neighborhood in South Side. You know, these things happen everywhere. As you said yesterday also, it's about a global story. It's about trying to find these universal links, you know, to all these places. I just went in America to North Dakota, and I spent 2 weeks on a reservation, Native American reservation, and he was just, I was blown away with the level of poverty and disenfranchisement, you know, in that community. I was amazed. I could never see anything like that. I mean, it was my first assignment in America. I've never photographed in America before. It was the first time.